Okay, guys, what made one of the most hardcore audiophiles and experienced audiophiles in the industry pivot from his reference speaker for 8 years to a new speaker? Stay tuned. Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. Got a really cool video for you today that dates back to when I took a midweek trip, impromptu, but last minute to Southern California. I was working on my Halloween costume and also my cowboy hat line. Well, this is not a cowboy hat, but this is a new hat. And then I'm repping today Sunset Marquis, my favorite hotel in West Hollywood that I always stay at, because I went there for the cowboy hat line and also Halloween. But every time I go to West Hollywood, I make the couple-hour trek down to see Rick Brown and Steve McCormick when I can, and also that $1 Million Acapella Spheron system. It's just worth the drive. And this one is no exception. This was a great trip and lots of new things to show you. I'm going to break up the video for the Acapella Spheron separate from this video. What I wanted to focus on was Rick Brown's changes in his system. And he's not one that changed things very much. He was pretty much at end game. He had speakers that were his reference for many years. I wasn't expecting it to change, but when I heard what he got, then I had to hear him in his home because this is a speaker that I was a big fan of as well. But before I even get to that, it's very important, because this is on topic to something we were discussing in the membership section, that it's more than just the gear that you're going to see with Rick Brown. This is the most esoteric, highest end bespoke gear you can find. And that's important. But what's more important that people overlook is who you're doing business with. So many people do not research who they're doing business with in this hobby, and it's a minefield for disappointment. I'll tell you anecdotally, my friend Doug, I'm not going to go into details, although the membership section, we talked about the distributor that he had a bad experience with. Even 3MA had a bad experience with this. It almost made him get out the hobby. It was such a bad experience. And then I was just literally today on Facebook, some guy had posted that he bought this product from this company, from a guy that anybody that's been in a hobby for any length of time knows that this guy's a seedy character, and all kinds of stories about how every business he's started has failed. And he's got a public felony record is on top of that. And people are not researching who they're doing business with, posting on Facebook, hey, what do you think of this? And they're just getting fooled over and over. And quite frankly, this happens in a lot of industries, but I don't know why in our industry, these guys that are so bad keep getting let back in and fooling people. And sometimes, even when I point it out to people, hey, did you research this guy? They still make excuses for it. I mean, it's just so gullible, it's a shame. It's really unfortunate that we have those people in the hobby, but unfortunately, and somewhat fortunately, they're mostly relegated to these forum warriors on Facebook that live in Facebook groups more than they live in their system. But I don't want to get into that rant too much, but it's a pet peeve of mine of we're not having a standard of who you do business with in this hobby and getting rid of the bad apples. You know, that's what is kind of a secret mission of mine at some point, but I've got too much other busy stuff to do. And really right now, I want to point out the people that are great. I'll take care of the bad apples at some point. But Rick Brown is one of those guys I could give my ATM password code to and trust. And on top of that, he's got the experience and acumen that even impresses guys with cost no object budgets. This combination of ethics and experience is very hard to find, although there's lots of good people in the hobby. I want to highlight a guy like him. And again, people I feature on my channel, I try to do as much vetting as I can. I cannot vet everybody that's been on my channel 100%. But when I go out multiple times, like I have with Rick Brown's house, Steve McCormick, I have these people in my membership group as well. These are guys that you can trust, and it's so important for you to value that as much as the fancy gear. Do not get in that position where you're disappointed by the people you do business with, it really ruins your experience in the hobby as much as just having a bad piece of gear, if not more. So again, this is also a reason why I just recently put in my YouTube store, I qualify for doing a store, I have consulting services. Let's say you don't have the time to do some research and know what brands to deal with. You can join the WhatsApp group for $5 and ask us. We all have a lot of experience in there. You've got other dealers, you got distributors, people I trust, audiophiles I trust. You can get, if you don't have that acumen and experience that I have to know who to deal with, you can ask us, but also have consulting projects with various people I know you can trust, like Steve McCormick, JR, and Joe with that system here in Houston where he does some really custom stuff. You can actually have consulting projects with them. Just order it through the shop and I'll put you in touch with them. It's worth your money to do that if you don't have some self-awareness and realize what your experience level is. It's a very worthwhile investment of time if you don't have that experience, and you can avoid a lot of problems and get their expertise and experience on top of that. Okay, enough of that little rant and side tangent, but getting back to Rick's system, what's really awesome about and why I had to make the drive, even though it was a very short trip to go see Rick's system, is that he made a pivot in speakers, which I wasn't expecting. I mean, he's had the same speakers for, I think, 8 years now, and that was his reference, the Tidal Akiras, and certainly would be reference and endgame for most anybody, great speakers. But when I heard what he put in his home, I realized I got to go listen to them, because these have been one of my cost no object dream speakers ever since I heard them at Rocky Mountain, maybe, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years ago, the Alsyvox. And actually, I got a funny story for you guys. The first time I saw Alsyvox was at Rocky Mountain Audio Fest. It was still at the Tech Center, so this was definitely well before COVID and even before it moved to the Gaylord for that 1 year. But, and this was before OCD Mikey had a YouTube channel, but I knew him back then, and he knew I was going to Rocky Mountain Audio Fest and he couldn't make it. So he asked me to check out Alsyvox, and I had never heard of it either. He's like, yeah, check it out. I might want to import them, you know, whatever. Let me know what you think. So I intentionally went to that room at Rocky Mountain, and I was blown away. I was super impressed. Other than the price, although in hindsight, I should have bought them back then because they were lesser known, and the price back then compared to what they are now was a lot more attractive. But, and they were definitely priced out of what Mikey felt would be the budget he could, you know, justify in the US. And there aren't a lot of people that have Alsyvox in here. It's a very wide panel, beautiful speaker, but panels, open baffles, you have to have a purpose dedicated room for the most part, and, you know, budget on top of that. This is not a speaker for everybody, but when it's set up right, and that time in Rocky Mountain was one of the best I've heard it, because I think the guys from Spain actually came and set that room up. Now, I've heard them subsequently in different rooms since then, and they've been good, but not as good as that first time. And even in Munich, the noise floor in those rooms are not that great. But man, I tell you what, at Rick's house, they had it dialed in, and it was exceeded my expectations, because Rick doesn't have a whole lot of treatments, and open baffles tend to need that more. As I spoke about recently, the back wave is the same as the front wave, so you're going to have cancellations at some point at your listening position, more so than a point source box. Both can benefit from DSP and other things, but he had it dialed in pretty darn good. It was super impressive. Clearly, to me, even from what I remember from his Tidal Akiras, which were great, this was a definite improvement in my opinion, and obviously in his opinion as well. And it's so much so, it impressed Jim, who has the acapella Spherons. He's going to put the Alsyvox Raffaellos in his pool system. So I'll be definitely going back for that install. And then Steve McCormick, he got wowed by him as well. So this was Alsyvox in an in-room situation, which I hadn't heard before, the Caravaggios, which you rarely see, and this was a treat. And so I've got music clips. I'm going to put that in a separate video, but I want you to walk through. If you haven't watched my other videos with Rick Brown, I'll link them, but We kind of did this video siloable, so he's going to walk through his system as of now. You'll see some other changes he's made if you've been paying attention over the years. And this gear and this setup was phenomenal. So enjoy, guys. Alrighty, guys, where am I? Who can figure out where I am right now? Just from this. Longtime subscribers may, but maybe if you hear his voice in the background. Oh, here's Steve. But actually, we're at Rick Brown's again. Impromptu visit to LA. I had to make the 2-hour drive down here to see Rick because you've got new arrivals.
Indeed.
One of my favorites. Tell me what's going on here. This is awesome.
First of all, since the last trip that you made, Jason, I've worked with Daniele Alsyvox, and this is his Caravaggio speaker. It's a 4-way ribbon, and it's 94 to 95 decibels efficient, depending upon the crossover connections. And we'll take a little closer look at how the crossover connections can be made that do have something to do with the actual efficiency. But it does give you tunability, and that's something we're going to talk about. Steve McCormick's been a part of that with me in setting these up. In fact, we set them up in an asymmetric sort of way. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So these speakers, these are retail $258,000, and as far as replacing the title Akiras, I had the title Akiras for 9 years, and I thought that literally was the pinnacle of dynamic reproduction. And maybe it still is to a large extent, but once you've heard these, it's over.
Okay.
That's about all I can say. It's over once you've heard these. These speakers do just about everything right, starting with that high efficiency, but then when you get down to the transparency that they have, the dynamics that they have, the incredible bass, the power transfer, the speed, the way they dynamically scale, and full size, fully fleshed images, dense images, and you'll get a chance to hear some of that later. So as I was alluding to a little bit earlier, if you come over, I want to show you just the crossover in the back.
Yeah.
So that is one serious piece of goods.
Yeah.
And as you can see, there's a number of connections, and that we can in fact work with these to determine what sounds best. So you can turn up as you can go plus on the treble, or you can go flat, or you can go down, and you can see those
right.
connections right there. Right. And what I was mentioning about asymmetry is that the right and the left, in our case, are set up a little bit differently to really adjust for the room.
Yeah.
And this is something that Steve McCormick came up with that idea as we were working to set these up. The other thing that we found, even though the way they project this image into the room, these speakers are a little less likely to have problems with placement with the side walls, simply the way they're being dipole.
Yeah.
But even having said that, what we found is that because we have essentially behind here glass, and on this side we have the drywall, that's where we changed the setup so that we could in fact account for that. And it seemed to work very well. The other thing that's changed since you were here last is that I've been working with HRS, very closely with HRS, and Mike Levatis and Emily there, excuse me. And they've helped us to come up with these isolation platforms that are dedicated, to the actual chokes. And once again, these are the chokes for the SET amplifiers.
By Epsilon.
By Epsilon. So these are all custom made. Another example of working with not only with the people at Epsilon, but working with Steve. Because we had these made based on the balance of the amplifier, so that they literally gave us multiple feet to work with. Without regard to what they normally make, we ended up with some custom made things that allow for the balance of the amplifiers, and the fact that, as you can see, there's very different isolation between the amps, vacuum tube, and essentially the chokes, solid state. So we have very, very different isolation platforms for them. So I've become an OEM partner with HRS. And this has been very, very successful for us in terms of having something that allows the amplifiers to perform at their best. And finally, these are an HRS product as well. And these are just dampening plates. Okay?
Yep.
There's really not much to them except it does stop some of the chassis ringing.
Right, mass loading the top.
And we mass load the top. Yes, exactly. Cable-wise, since you were here, you can see those braided cables are all from Enklein. All of the AC cables are from Enklein. They're their new reference cables, the Xerxes. Up on cables by pointing out to you that These cables are all the new Enklein SHT, which is their reference cables that are in the SMC HiFi One Nexus. And just as a refresher, you see on the backside, there's all of these silver cables that are ground cables that are made by Enklein Cables and Dave Kleinbeck rather. But the more important one over here is the one that comes to the loudspeaker. So Daniele did provide for a grounding wire, and you can see it probably easiest here. There it is right there.
Okay. So
He's
this is unique to this model?
No, it's not unique to the model.
Okay.
But it makes a dramatic difference when we
I've
first
seen
hooked these speakers up and we plugged that wire in. It did the same thing, I might add, with the Tidal Akiras, because they also had a third binding post for that.
Audio Vector's done it, 10i.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we hope more speaker manufacturers will do that as a matter of course. To whatever metal structure there is, which varies a lot from one speaker to another. But if they connect the internal metal structure to a ground lug at the back of the speaker, then it can be connected to the grounding system. And it's surprising to hear how much of a clear audible improvement that makes.
And actually, it was it Nathan that used to work at YG? He would modify the YGs to have
That's correct. Of course, the YGs are solid aluminum chassis, so Nathan started doing that some years ago. He used to work for YG as a machinist, but he would include the speakers and his entire rack system. All of the various metal, parts would be then grounded back to a common earth ground, or there's a star ground system as part of the AC Nexus there.
Gotcha.
That literally is the flashback to one of your earlier videos in this room where we pointed out that the entire system runs on a single AC cable.
Yeah, single one that goes.
We got everything star grounded into the box, and then you can see the binding post that goes out to the copper rods outside on the left, and then you can see the one cable that the entire system is running on.
Yeah.
So that's how we do that. The other thing that's new, really new since you were here, is the Robert Koda phonostage.
Okay.
Robert Koda of Japan. And I've waited quite a long time to finally get 3 of those things in. I think it is the finest piece of audio electronics that you can buy from a regular serial manufacturer. And now I'm being very specific about that because I don't think that it's better as a phono stage than our SMC HiFi One line stage is as a line stage. But the 2 of them, in my opinion, represent the best that money can buy. That I've never really experienced anything that is quite as remarkable as a phono stage as this Robert Koda. It is absolutely the Ne Plus Ultra. It's also $74,000, but in this case, I think it's justified. If you take a look at the casework, you've probably never seen anything quite made like that. And at the same time, if you take a look at the casework that's on our own preamp, it's very rare that you will see any kind of casework that's made like that. So we didn't put our money gratuitously into things. We put it in the areas where you actually have some sonic benefit, and so has this man. Also, this is a brand new DAC and streamer below. This is a product that's made by emmLabs. The first 3 of them came to me last week.
And that has just been released, hasn't it?
It's just been released last week. Yeah, this is one of the first 3. So
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, this is one of the first 3 units made, and they've now integrated their streamer in with an entire new digital architecture. So I use that purely for streaming because all of my demos, as I'm going to do for you today, are in analog. And since you were last here, I've got the Kuzma Sapphire arm, and as Steve pointed out, we did work on breaking in the silver wires internally, the silver conduit wire internally. And that did make a difference that we clearly heard. Obviously, you're never going to break in those cables. You can play records for the rest of your life, you're never going to break in a cable. But the kiln allowed us to do so. And the way we did it was we literally removed the connections and connected that to Steve's device. I'm oversimplifying, but it had enough current as well as voltage to not damage anything. I mean, you can't run unlimited voltage through these little teeny tiny wires.
Right.
But it did the job. And we still are using the Lyra Atlas. Mark Dohmann was here a few months ago.
Okay.
He gave a tune-up on this Generation 3 Helix 1. And of course, it has its new record clamp, the RC1. That happens to be the third iteration of it. And it literally takes vibrations from the spindle and dissipates them inside. It's very effective. Very effective. Very, very effective.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, this basically has a -K electron microscope quality balance.
You can see what happens. If you look in the middle, in the plinth, you can see the -K. Now I'm pushing down on the platter, on the actual table. And now you can see that based on this weight, you see the float? So that's what allows us to, round numbers, 5 hertz or so is what that's tuned for. So it works really, really well.
May even be a little below that.
It might be, but we're not going to exaggerate on this channel. I'm always going to be on the other side of that. But that's exactly what it does. So that's basically it. What continues in my practice is just finding the music that will allow us to illuminate what these systems do.
Which I know you have great lacquers, I've heard here.
Yes, the lacquers, the half-speed masters. The direct-to-disc, those
are always a treat. Yeah. Well, yeah, I've been in your room before, but given all the changes, especially with speakers alone, and then this new phono stage, and we've also talked in detail about the Berning in the past, and we are going to go visit Jim later, who has the Berning, so we can talk about those over there. Yeah. But yeah, I'm going to put some music clips. This is going to be my first time. Ever since I saw the Alsyvox way back when Rocky Mountain was still at the Tech Center, they've been one of my best cost no object speakers because they're line source. They're kind of they give you that scale, all the positives that you've said you've noted. I've kind of sniffed the potential of at these show conditions, but never heard it in a room.
Right.
And now this will be the first time I'm hearing, especially this model, set up in a room. So I'll have some music clips and some reports on that. But yeah. Really cool stuff.
Jason, for your readers, they might be interested that Daniele is actually coming here. He is Italian, but he lives in Valencia, Spain.
Okay.
So he and his wife are going to be here a little bit later this month, and will give us the opportunity to have the designer to talk about this asymmetric setup that we did.
Sure.
And get some more feedback. The very first demonstration that I did of these speakers led to a sale of the Raffaello, which is the wider, bigger one.
The bigger ones, yeah.
And we're going to put that one in this room next. That's going to be the next thing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Sometime in 25. So as we were talking about it should come to about this width. So we will be probably at the limit of the room, but that's another reason Daniele is coming, because he will help me to really
confirm it's going to work here.
Exactly.
Yeah. But you already have a customer for the Raffaello.
He's already bought it.
Yeah. So I'll definitely be filming that. So
absolutely.
Because that's very rare to have in the U.S.
Extremely. There's not that many of these here for that.
Exactly.
Well, and what it comes down to is that I think what's going to happen is that these loudspeakers, because of the review that was done by Harley and Absolute Sound, and he also reviewed them with this amp, that really did it.
Okay.
That really did it, because he spoke clearly about it, non-ambiguously.
Yeah.
So I've been waiting for you to get here. All right.
Yeah, well, this was definitely worth the drive today, impromptu visit. I guess the only thing left to do is let's start listening.
Okay, we'll do it.